The Persian Empire was one of the largest empires in history, expanding its borders, enriching its culture, and making its influence deeply felt. This empire can be divided into two main periods: Achaemenid Empire, 550 BC, 330 BC, and the Sassanids, 224 BC, 651 BC. The Achaemenid period allowed the Persians to rise to the top of world history and build their own civilization. But let's look a little deeper and try to understand how they built such a great empire, all the while thinking we need a royal road. 1. The beginning of the Persian Empire, the rise of a tribe. The foundations of the Persian Empire can be traced back to the area in the northeast of what is now Iran, inhabited by a tribe called the Persians. At first, they were a small tribe, but over time they grew into an empire with vast territories. But what is even more interesting is this: how does a tribe grow and suddenly it is announced they are going to build an empire? I wonder with what strategy they did it. This journey soon led to the name of one of the most important figures in history, Cyrus the Great. Cyrus was different from many rulers of the time. He was not only a warrior, but also a diplomat and a ruler. In other words, in today's parlance, someone who could express himself very well in the business world. Cyrus gained power by offering tolerance and freedom to the people rather than oppressing them. As the saying goes, win your people, rule your country. And Cyrus was a leader who did exactly that. He achieved his first great success by conquering the Median Empire. Around 550 BC, he defeated the Medes and made Persia a powerful state for the first time. But his real revolutionary act was conquering the Babylonian Empire and introducing freedom to the Babylonian people. I think if he was a modern-day ruler of that period, he would have gotten the hashtag #Hashkiros the Liberator on social media, for sure. The people of Babylon, especially those under Jewish captivity, accepted Cyrus as their savior. He made such a big impression that he even authorized the rebuilding of the Jerusalem temple in Babylon. Maybe even at that time there were messages of admiration for him, saying, "Oh Cyrus, you are not a bad man at all. Who knows?" This is where Cyrus's real success lay. He was able to conquer while at the same time being fair and tolerant in his rule. This is a lesson for modern leaders. Embrace cultural diversity, but don't send a Twitter message that you can throw at your people. 2. After Cyrus, Darius the First and the expansion of the empire. After Cyrus's death, his son Cambyses ascended the throne, but some difficulties in Cambyses' government soon overthrew him, and Darius the First, 522 BC, 486 BC, ascended the throne. Darius was a great ruler who brought his empire to its peak. You know how we sometimes say, the new boss really wants change? Well, Darius was just such a leader. Darius's greatest achievement was the construction of the Persian Royal Road. This road ran from Constantinople, Byzantium to Susa. So what we really want to say is, are you thinking of buying a car? Come to the end of the Royal Road. Not only did the highway speed up transportation, but it also expanded the cultural influence of the Persian Empire. Darius also made the Persian Empire much more centralized. By dividing it into regions called satrapies, he appointed a satrap to each region and was able to centralize control over the different peoples across the empire. If you ask, well, why should he do that? Darius was probably saying, let's centralize it a little bit more so that nobody thinks he's the senior ruler. But Darius's biggest challenge was in the west with the Greeks. At the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC, the Persians suffered a major defeat against the Greeks. This was the biggest loss for the Persians in the west. The Greeks said, no matter how big you are, some things work against Greek resistance. Xerxes and the final move west, Thermopylae and Salamis. Xerxes ascended to the throne to finish the Greek campaign started by his father Darius. You know how sometimes someone says, Dad, your job's done, I'm here now. Well, Xerxes did exactly that, but of course the situation was a bit more serious. His father had suffered a heavy defeat at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. That battle had marked the Greek resistance as the big threat, so Xerxes had only one goal: to avenge that loss and restore his father's honor. To crush Greek resistance, Xerxes assembled a massive army and navy. But here's where things started to get complicated. You know the saying, big army equals big victory? Well, it wasn't going to work out that way this time. The Battle of Thermopylae, 480 BC, 300 Spartans versus 1.5 million Persians. With Xerxes' massive army bearing down on them, the Greeks weren't exactly filled with optimism, but fortunately they didn't lose their courage. Now imagine this, one side is bringing 1.5 million soldiers, and the other side has only 300, and these aren't just any 300 men, they're Spartans. You know, those guys who live by the motto, either you kill or you get killed. Not a lot of room for error, and here come Leonidas and the 300 Spartans. In the narrow pass of Thermopylae, these 300 men managed to hold off Xerxes' 100,000 strong army. That famous scene where Leonidas shouts, "We will fight to the last breath for our homeland." That's when Greek pride reached its peak. Sadly, due to treachery, the Spartans had to retreat, but you know what they thought? If we're going to die, let's at least go down in history. This battle, despite the defeat, boosted the morale of the Greeks because it showed that a handful of people could stand up to a massive army. Xerxes definitely didn't expect this. He might have thought, what's 300 Spartans going to do? But this resistance had a profound psychological effect, and the morale of the Greeks skyrocketed. The Battle of Salamis, 480 BC, Xerxes' strategic mistake. After the setback at Thermopylae, Xerxes turned his attention to the seas. In Salamis, he was so sure of his victory that he may have overestimated his chances. After all, the Persians had built a giant navy. But here came Xerxes' biggest strategic mistake. Themistocles, the commander of the Greek navy, didn't want to face the massive Persian ships head-on. Instead, he planned to trap them in narrow waters. The Persian navy was large, but the Greeks were faster and more agile. Xerxes, failing to see this, kept underestimating the Greeks and walked straight into the trap. Imagine Xerxes with his giant fleet trying to fight in the narrow waters of Salamis, while the Greeks are thinking, hey, this is our backyard. Greek ships were smaller and more nimble, giving them a huge advantage over the massive Persian ships. The simple rule here was, big ships don't do well in narrow waters, and that's how Xerxes' confidence in his fleet ended up being his undoing. The Greeks trapped the Persian navy and rendered it ineffective. Xerxes, who was expecting a major victory, suffered a huge defeat. Salamis marked the end of Persian dominance in the west. This battle could easily be one of the biggest examples in the series. Strategic Mistakes 101. Xerxes' mistakes. Big army doesn't always win. Xerxes' defeat at Salamis was due to several key mistakes. First and foremost, there was overconfidence. A huge fleet, tons of soldiers. But the Greeks moved as one and used their speed to squeeze the Persians into a corner. Second, misreading the geography was a huge error. Xerxes wanted to fight in open seas, but the Greeks changed the game by using narrow waters to their advantage. Simple logic here, big ships can't maneuver in tight spaces. Lastly, there were issues with internal disunity. The Persian fleet was not as coordinated as it could have been, and that lack of cohesion contributed to Xerxes' defeat. It's a classic case of big armies don't always win, sometimes strategy and speed are the key. What happened after Xerxes? Even though Thermopylae became a legendary tale of heroism, Salamis sealed the fate of Persia's dreams of dominating the West. Now the Greeks knew they could stand their ground against even the largest armies. Xerxes' vision of a Persian empire in the West was crushed. In the end, Xerxes learned that sometimes having a massive army isn't enough, and that a good strategy is worth more than size. You know that saying, it's not enough to be big, you've got to be smart too? Well, that's pretty much what we could say about Xerxes. 4. The fall of the empire, Alexander the Great, and conclusion. After its peak, the Persian Empire faced a series of internal and external threats. Alexander the Great's entry into Persian territory in 334 BC hastened the end of the empire. Alexander defeated the last Persian ruler, Darius the Great, with victories such as Issos and Gaugamela. Despite his best efforts, Darius the Great was unable to defend the empire, and Alexander's victory in 330 BC marked the end of the Persian Empire. Alexander the Great not only conquered territory but also adopted Persian culture to some extent. So maybe he was saying, let's take a little bit of Persian culture so that we can have a little bit of a Middle Eastern design mix. 5. The Sassanid period, a new beginning. After the fall of the Achaemenid Empire, the Parthian Empire ruled Persia for a short time. However, a new dynasty called the Sassanids, 224-651 BC, emerged. The Sassanids reunited the former Persian territories and became a great power, fighting the Roman Empire for a long time. Persian culture and religious beliefs, such as Zoroastrianism, also played an important role under the Sassanids. 6. Legacy of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire went down in history not only for its military achievements, but also for its cultural and administrative contributions. Zoroastrianism, Persian art, architecture, and tolerance had a profound impact not only on the Persian Empire but on the entire Middle East. Today, Iran is still considered the heartland of Persian culture. The legacy of the Achaemenid Empire has played an important role not only as an ancient empire but also in the development of the modern world. And so it is. The story of the Persian Empire is a history shaped not only by wars and conquests, but also by tolerance, cultural interaction, and developed systems of governance. The legacy of a civilization that influenced world history, both militarily and culturally, still lives on. Hopefully, understanding how such a great empire rose and then collapsed will give us lessons in governance beyond history. The Persian Empire, an empire that was both legendary, instructive, and a bit really far gone,